Hey everyone, so we know Connor Bedard is going to go to the Chicago Blackhawks, most likely, unless something crazy happens. You see the Hawks jersey in the background, but you look at the scenario of this draft, and it's a deep draft. It's a crazy draft. It's going to be a crazy first round. So if you're a new subscriber, welcome. On the way to 50,000 subscribers, hit that like button, hit the notification bell. I just ripped through a quick top 16 after the lottery based on the order. And honestly, for me, I looked at a few other people's mock drafts after I kind of completed mine, and I made a couple swaps, I think like 2 or 3, but I stood pat on like what I was feeling. And to me, you're seeing the top 3 right now: Bedard, Fantilli, and then Michkov to Columbus. I could see Michkov falling here because of the scenario, because he's not going to arrive in the NHL till about 2026. So there is that scenario. But when I look at Columbus, and they've shown it a few times, if you look at Kekalainen, he's shown a couple times that he'll either reach in the draft or he's taken a couple rushes. Like, he is willing to be patient. And the Blue Jackets wanted this Bedard pick bad. They wanted Bedard to be in the middle of Laine and Gaudreau. Yes, they're picking Michkov, not a center here potentially, but on the wing, Michkov, Laine as 2 scorers, 2 threats on each line long-term would be insane. So I think also this pick could incentivize Laine to stay long-term. I just think it would be a big investment. I think a lot of people are locking in the Fantilli at number 2. We could see a shocker, but I think that's kind of where my head's at. Leo Carlsson to San Jose. I think there could be swap in here. I think San Jose could go Will Smith here, but I just feel like Leo Carlsson, shout out to Jack Olson, there's a lot of Sharks fans that want Carlsson. I just think 6'3", he's being compared to Nick Backstrom. I just think how he's dynamic, and him and Hurdle up the middle, down the middle long term is going to be huge. Looking at Will Smith to Montreal, you know what? I look at Kent Hughes. I just feel like he's going to pick the best on the board. I saw Craig Button's mock draft, and I want to give Craig a shout for my next one, or a couple picks from here. But Will Smith to Montreal is probably the best player on the board here. If Michkov falls, they should take him. If Leo Carlsson falls, they should take him. They should take one of those 3 guys. Zach Benson to Arizona. Ryan Leonard to Philadelphia. Okay, so the Leonard pick, I'll just say this. Shout out to Craig Button, and Corrado sold me on this one. Leonard, Boston College rep, U.S. development program rep. Exact same scenario as Cutter Gauthier, who the Flyers drafted. And if John Tortorella is in the long-term plans, Ryan Leonard is that perfect fit. A little bit of a bite, a little bit of an edge, hardworking guy. I think that's a Philly pick right there. Zach Benson, I honestly could see Zach Benson from anywhere from like this Arizona pick to their next pick, the pick they got from Ottawa. He's teammates with Connor Agiki, who is a Coyotes draft pick. I would also outline that he was a teammate of Matthew Savoy, so maybe if he falls, the Sabres could scoop him up. But I honestly could see Benson going as high as 6, as low as like 13, 14. To me, because he's smaller, and we've seen smaller players fall at times. I mean, again, this is a defenseman, but after like all these highlight reels and all these big plays and just the numbers Lane Hutson's putting up, like he should have never fallen later second round. And just Zach Benson, I feel like if people let him fall outside of the top 10, you're going to have regrets. So Ryan Leonard at 7, Zach Benson at 6. Let's keep her going. Gabriel Perreault at 8 to the Washington Capitals. I could also see them picking Dvorsky here. Viveiros there, Slovakia represent. Dvorsky, you're going to see a hot take coming up, but I think there's going to be a movement here from this 7 to 11 spot. I think the Canucks could trade up. I think a couple teams could make moves here in the middle of the first round just based on how deep it is and looking for fit. And that's why I go David Reinbacher. Man, the Austria represent, and they have Casper already. So when I look at, and just to, we'll go through the next picks here. I just feel like Detroit has always been, going back to their championship teams, seeing guys like Lidstrom or Falsky, I feel like they're always trying to build great defense groups. And Reinbacher, I feel like on that right side, next to like Edvinsson long-term, would be so stud-worthy. And then Seider as like the number 1 offensive guy. I just feel like if you have a top 4 and Wallander in there as well, of Seider, Wallander, Reinbacher, and Edvinsson, the Red Wings will have the best top 4 in the league potentially. So I think a lot of people are knocking them down for picking a forward, or marking them down for picking a forward, but I'm going to pick them to pick a defenseman. Hot take. Oliver Moore, I believe he's going to the University of Minnesota. So Snuggerud already for the Blues. Oliver Moore, big speed, or like big time speed, and I think Oliver Moore could be a really dynamic player. And Dvorsky to Canucks. You know what? I think Dvorsky's not going to fall much past this. Like, if the Canucks pass on Dvorsky, that'd be such an L. I think Dvorsky could go as high as, I mean, shout out to Craig Button again. He had Dvorsky at number 5 to Montreal. I don't think he's going to go there if Will Smith or Leo Carlsson or even Mitch Koff are on the board for Montreal. I think that Habs fans would lose their mind if they pass on one of those 3 guys, even though I think Dvorsky's going to be a great pick. But that's why I'm saying, like, I think Dvorsky could go to Washington or even, like, Detroit, St. Louis. Like, I feel like Dvorsky's going to go in around here from 8 to 11, somewhere in around that spot. That'd be my take for Dvorsky right now. But I honestly, Perreault's an interesting one, similar to Benson. I feel like Perreault could also fall. There's been concerns about his skating and like being a secondary guy. But I think the Caps also having a Quebec native like Henrik Lapierre in the system, Lapierre and Perreault could rip it down the line. And yeah, I mean, I think the Caps are looking to build something past Ovi, obviously. So this one gets, so guys, look at these next picks here. So Axel Sandin Pellikka here. I think the Canucks, so going back to that, I think the Canucks would take, and that's why I have ASP next to the Canucks. I think they could take Axel Sandin Pellikka because, I mean, there's a very high likeliness that they're going to draft a defenseman here. But if both Reinbacher and Axel Sandin Pellikka are off the board, they could go forward. But if Dvorsky's still on the board, I think you just default to go best player on the board. So I think if Sandin Pellikka's on the board, there's a high chance the Canucks will take him. But if a guy like Dvorsky falls, I would even say like a Colby Barlow. I mean, I have Colby Barlow falling a little bit here to the Buffalo Sabres. Sabres fans, if you get Colby Barlow, guy almost ripped 50 in the OHL this year. He is going to be a stud. Colby Barlow should not leave the top 15 in this draft. And that's where I go to my hot takes. I got 3 OHL guys in a row here. Colby Barlow, Quentin Musty to Pittsburgh. I'll say this, guys. The Penguins drafted Collins, defenseman from Sudbury, fellow Sudbury boy, and Quentin Musty here. Well, he's American, but plays for the Sudbury Wolves. Musty could be a sneaky pick for Pittsburgh here. Pittsburgh's usually later in the first round. They like to pick guys that they feel a success point in the top 6. Quentin Musty, like, I don't want to put a guarantee here, but I basically want to put a guarantee this guy's going to be a stud top 6 guy. Musty ripped it in the U.S., and he's shown in the tourney. He showed in the O. So I think for Barlow and Musty and even Callum Ritchie going to Nashville here, I think these are the 3 best OHL forwards here, and they're all going to pan out as top 6 guys. I think Barlow probably has that more, I would say, overall dynamic factor, but Musty put up numbers this year. I think I don't know if he was in around 80 points, I think, in like 60-something games. Goyette put up the most numbers for the Wolves, but I would look out for Musty, man. Musty, a lot of people have him late in the first round or even dipping into the second round. To me, there's certain guys that always slip. Musty doesn't have the lack of size factor. He's like 6'2", 6'3", so he has that size factor. But there's always guys, for some reason, that people just, they go galaxy brain. They overlook. And Logan Stankoven was another example. Shout out to him for hopping on the HTH channel. Like, there's guys that put up numbers, and it's Gabriel Perreault, another example. Just don't overlook the numbers, man. Sometimes if guys putting up production, especially as a 17-year-old in junior, 16-year-old in junior, it's not a coincidence half the time, or most of the time. Callum Ritchie, another dynamic player out of the OHL. I think every time I watched Owen Sound or Oshawa this year, Colby Barlow and Callum Ritchie, respectively, were the 2 standouts by far. And Matthew Wood to Calgary, BC guy. I mean, the Flames love anyone that's connected to Vancouver in some way. So, but yeah, Matthew Wood also dynamic. And I think Edward Sales, my honorable mention. I was going to add a couple more, but he's fallen the ranks a bit. At one point, I think he was as high as like top 7 on a lot of people's boards. So he's fallen, but I would just look out for him as a later pick, potentially a steal. But yeah, guys, overall, I think there's so many swaps here. I was going back and forth. Like, at one point, I had Dvorsky going to Washington. I had Perreault going to Buffalo because the connection is dad. So to me, there's so many potential swaps here. At one point, I had Axel Sandin Pellikka locked into Vancouver, but a lot of other people have had that. I just feel like, you know what? I look at the Canucks, and they like to draft overseas guys a lot, so Sandin Pellikka fits that mold. But I go back to, as I said, if Dvorsky's on the board, I think the Canucks should not pass on him. Like, I think it would be a brutal mistake if one of, and I've seen it online a lot, the 2 guys that people have potentially falling are Zach Benson and Gabriel Perreault. If one of those two guys are on the board, I think Vancouver should take one of those guys. But especially if Dvorsky's on the board, man. Dvorsky or Benson, if they're on the board, Vancouver better freaking snag them. I'm getting on the Canucks because I just think how they handle this season, they need to get value at this pick, whether it's trading up and making sure you get your guy or just making sure you pick the best player on the board. Positional draft choices sometimes don't work. And I mean, this is not a defense-heavy draft in the first round. I would say maybe we get 5 defensemen in this first round. And yeah, I think that's probably generous. I mean, maybe you guys come back to this video and there was like 7 or 8 defensemen drafted, but I'm just thinking the 3 guys in my head combined with maybe a couple in the 20s. I'll say 5 potentially in the first round, potentially. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think. I mean, going right back to the top, to me, I'm pretty confident in this top 5. Like, if Kent Hughes is going to stand by best player on the board, he's not going to let Will Smith, Karlsson, or Michkov pass this spot. So at that point, Bedard, Fantilli, Michkov, Karlsson, and Will Smith should be the top 5. Some people will have it as a hot take that Michkov, or I have Michkov going to Columbus for now. A lot of people have Leo Carlsson going to Columbus, but I've seen the Sharks fans hyping up the Leo Carlsson train. Fellow Swede, get the hype going on. And hey, maybe Leo Carlsson will help keep your Erik Karlsson in San Jose. So sorry guys, again, I didn't have my mic, but we're trying the best with the audio when I can. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like, hit the notification bell, and drop your comments down below, and we'll see you on the next video or stream. Have a good one. Peace.